Good afternoon, one and all. Welcome to GST Industry Connect session organized by guest speaker team of XLRI PCTM Batch 23. On behalf of XLRI, I feel euphoric to welcome Mr. Amitav Mukherji. Can we have a huge round of applause for him? Mr. Amitav Mukherji is the Head Corporate Human Resource Officer at ITC Limited. Prior to this role, Mr. Mukherji was serving as a VP HR at ITC's Food Division. Mr. Mukherji comes with an experience of over 25 years and has spent a significant part of his career with ITC. He joined ITC in 1995 as Assistant Manager HR, and over a period of more than 2 decades, he kept climbing the ladder of success, taking responsibilities as Human Resource Manager, Vice President HR, and now a Corporate HR Head in the organization. Mr. Mukherji's whirlwind journey with ITC began with a strong desire to gain experience in industrial relations, in trying to meet the challenges at ITC, including gathering knowledge of manufacturing and working with various top leaders. He managed to gain experience in labor management as well as collective bargaining. It took Mr. Mukherji nearly 5 years to begin leading the HR function at the company's Bangalore factory. He also led a team of sales and marketing personnel and managed the distribution portfolio for the company. His long-time desire to go overseas and attain a master's degree was also fulfilled by the company, which supported him financially in this endeavor. After completing a master's in human resources from Cornell University, Mr. Mukherji began leading the HR function at ITC's Food Division in 2006. An alumnus of XLRI, Mr. Mukherji also worked as an intern with Citibank India. He graduated in economics from Loyola College and completed his schooling from St. Xavier's College, Mumbai. We welcome you, sir. I would like to call upon Balaji and Shilpita to give away the bouquet to our guest.
Thank you.
Sir, we would like to invite you to share your words with us. Thank you.
Thank you folks for having me. I know you just went through an exam and you probably don't want to sit through another corporate talk, but I'll try and make it as pleasant as possible. Firstly, it feels great to be back at Excel after 27 years. We would have been here in 2020 if not for the pandemic for our silver jubilee. But I think out of about 120 of us, about 70 people have showed up, and it feels great to walk around campus and see things. I mean, they're so different now than what it used to be, but I think it's all for the better. All of you are special in many ways because you all have a lot of work experience behind you. I understand anywhere from 5 to even 12 years. It's phenomenal. It takes a lot of courage at that point in career to stop, assess yourself and dive in to invest a year in this kind of an intensive course. I always actually, when I look back, I feel that had I come to an MBA program afterwards, experience, I would have been better off. We would have probably taken it more seriously than what we did, because I'm not sure what I learned. And I think most of it I only found out once I started working. I had the other experience like you, because after 10 years of working, I decided to go and pursue a master's program again. And I know what it takes to make that break. And certainly it took a lot. I still remember going for that visa interview and almost deciding not to go and board the aircraft. I said, who wants to give up everything and again study? But I think it's always refreshing to take a break, to take that time off, to reflect and to sort of engage yourself. A couple of things about me. I have been with ITC right from campus. Well, almost. I did join them in the first 2 months. I was still making up my mind. And then I went back and I pleaded to have the job back, and they were kind enough to give it to me. So it's been 27 years with the same organization. So you will not hear from me any diversity of views for sure. So you will hear from me views about one organization and my experience. So I come with that statutory warning. Everything I say may not be relevant and applicable to you. There are many reasons I have been at the same place, but I thought since it may interest you, and from my experience, I think for many of us, and I'm not the only one in the company, there are many seniors who've been around 3 decades more, in fact. And when we look back and we understand why have we all stayed in the same organization, I think it's fundamentally driven by the kind of work you get to do. You need to feel challenged. You need to feel that you're making a difference in what you're doing, and it makes a difference to the organization. You find fellowship, which means you find folks who think like you, work like you, and even if they have differences, the differences are expressed in a way which is agreeable. And you find some common cause. So you get that, you click, So sometimes you work at a place where you gel well with colleagues, you have also good relationships outside work. All that matters to me for sure, many of my colleagues, and I think that's what kept many of us in the same place. And I think lastly, we feel a lot of pride about what the company is doing in the country today. I have a couple of slides. I could share those with you to give you an introduction about ITC, a little bit about our history, what we are doing today, and then I'd be happy to take any questions either about my experience in the company or what opportunities lie in ITC. Feel free to interrupt me anytime. Okay. In any case, I'll make sure that I address all your questions. I have a bit of a hard stop at about 4:20, 4:30 because I have to leave for CAP, but we'll try and make full use of the time. Okay. So this is really a very, very old organization. Can you see this slide? Yeah. So we celebrated 100 years in 2010, and I was, of course, around that time. But it's been a more than 100-year journey, and the organization has really shape-shifted from what it used to be. We actually started out as just a tobacco company, and if you look at the BSE 30, when you look at it in 1979, these are the companies which were there in the BSE 30, and these are the companies which are there today. Okay, only 6 remain. So that, in a very quick snapshot, tells you the kind of change which has happened in India recently. We are actually now a completely globalized economy. Okay, we may be operating here, but the best of global competition operates in India. And I think across categories and industries, it's very, very intensely competitive. Not only do you have global competitors, you have regional and national competitors. And they all play very different games in the marketplace. They come with different strengths, they come with different sources of advantage. And sometimes companies like ITC, which straddle multiple businesses and straddle multiple segments of consumers, land up competing with a variety of organizations, national, domestic, state level. Going back a little bit, we started out in 1910, typically as a cigarette company, marketing, manufacturing and selling cigarettes. Even then, as far as 110 years back, there was no Virginia flu cured tobacco grown in India. So ITC, along with farmers in South India, actually pioneered the cultivation of that kind of tobacco because you had to import everything. And even then, there was a very, there was a culture of innovation, improvisation, and over time we ensured that all our raw material, whether it is engineering, spares, agricultural produce, we were able to sort of ensure that it's all vertically integrated and available domestically. Those days, foreign exchange was a huge problem. You just couldn't get permission to import anything. So a lot of effort had to go in improvising, in innovating, and creating substitutes for imports. And I think that is some pioneering work which the company did that time. we had to create our own printing business. And today that printing business is actually a very successful commercial venture because there were no high quality printers available in the country. And why did you need that? Because being an FMCG product, packaging was a very key differentiator and a communicator of value. And we find today, at least in the cigarette industry where advertising is restricted, packaging is the only means of communication. So very important business for ITC, packaging and printing. That's how the genesis of that business. We went into the hotels business and paper boards in the 70s, purely driven by what the national agenda was. And that's also the time in the 70s when the government came up with certain restrictions on foreign ownership. And many of our foreign shareholders had to divest their stake in ITC, which they did. And we got into the hotel business fundamentally because foreign exchange was such an issue that the government gave a lot of incentives to companies to enter any business which will allow them to earn forex, and hotels was one of them. The other national priority was development of backward areas, okay, which is what led ITC to get into the paper board business, and which is why we acquired the company called ITC Bhadrachalam. So Bhadrachalam Paper Boards was a standalone company which we bought it and integrated it into ITC. And then of course we already had a footprint in the agri business because of our network with farmers for leaf tobacco cultivation, which then we extended into other agri products, and today we are the largest buyer of wheat in India after the government of India. So the 70s were also a very challenging time because these businesses we got into a very, very capital intensive. And ITC Hotels and ITC Bhadrachalam were standalone entities. They just did not have the strength to go and obtain capital from the market. So they were integrated into ITC. And those were years when we also decided to diversify into many new businesses. We went into ITC Classic Finance. We went into restaurants. We opened the Bukhara brand in Singapore, New York, etc. We got into edible oils. We got into aqua farming. So we got into a host of industries, and many of them didn't work out well for various reasons at that point of time. And I don't think we had the skills or the right talent at that point in time to make a success of those, and we had to exit those. So those were fairly difficult times for the companies. Went right up to the early 90s when a lot of this business restructuring had to happen. In fact, that was also the time where ITC had a conflict with its primary overseas shareholder, which is British American Tobacco. There were attempts to destabilize the company, so on and so forth. But it was a very, very stormy time where we went through a lot of churn, and I remember having joined the company at that point of time. And one was concerned with what was going around. But I think the beauty of the organization was that all of us who were in the trenches, we continued doing our work. And we were not sort of affected by what was happening several levels above us. So what we have today is really three sets of businesses in the company. Horizon 1 are the traditional businesses. Cigarettes, paperboard, hotels. These are businesses where we have a large presence. We have leadership position in these businesses. We are either number 1 or number 2 in the market, and very well placed in a competitive context. Horizon 2 businesses are businesses we have created in the last 2 decades or so, where we have borrowed skills from different parts of ITC and created new businesses. You may be familiar with Ashirwad Atta. For example, we are able to deliver a consistently high quality product because of our sourcing capability in the agri business. Or we are able to create recipes for many of our food products with the help of our chefs in the hotels business. We have a common trade marketing and distribution highway. Very critical because this distribution highway was built on the back of the tobacco business. And today we service about 7 million outlets every week at varying frequencies. So that entire trade marketing and distribution infrastructure is available not just for one product, but for whatever product we launch in the trade marketing and in the FMCG portfolio. And that's able to give you access and reach at a speed which is very difficult for other players and competitors to emulate. So you are able to ensure availability and visibility for products within a month of launch across the country. And that's a huge task and it's a huge advantage. So Horizon 2 are businesses which have blended skills from different parts of the group and created new businesses. Even if I take the example of our chocolates brand Fabel, we are able to use the premium positioning of our hotels to create Fabel boutiques. If I take Be Natural, we use Indian fruits for our juices which are all sourced by the agribusiness. Or our coffee brand, Sunbeam. Or for example, in the case of snacks, we have backward integrated and we own a seed company called ITC Technico, okay, which allows you to ensure that you get high yielding crops and you get the right type of raw material for your snacking business. So what appears like a conglomerate with very different businesses has very strong back-end synergies, which may not be so visible to the front end. And Horizon 3 businesses are really capabilities which we want to build for the future. So we have recently decided to launch something called ITC Mars, which is a meta market for rural agricultural services. Okay, we are trying to link farmers with FPOs and rural service providers, seed providers, fertilizer providers, and creating a market for farmers in rural India. These are some examples. We are experimenting with a cloud kitchen in Bangalore. So these are some businesses of the future which we hope will become Horizon 3 businesses as they grow. We are approximately 60,000 crores in terms of gross revenue, amongst the top 3 corporates in the private sector in terms of contribution to the exchequer. 75% of value added accrues to the exchequer. Free cash flow every year of 13,000 crores, 12 businesses, okay, 200 plus manufacturing units and over 113 hotel properties. We have also created 25 plus world-class brands. Most of these are organically created brands and it is very, very difficult to create brands. I mean, vast majority of new brands fail. Okay. So in our foods and our personal care business, like Bingo, Sunfeast, Ashirvad of course, MasterChef, Kings of India, Vivel, Fiamma, these are all organic brands. Then we have bought brands like Savlon, Be Natural, Nimai. So by and large the portfolio comprises of brands which have been built in-house over the last 2 decades and then there are brands which have been sort of acquired from the market. We also have a very large life sciences and technology center in Bangalore. Over 900 patents have been filed. They have over 300 plus scientists there. Okay, so we are trying to create proprietary knowledge in many of the categories we operate in and therefore very large investments in R&D. This in a snapshot is some of the businesses we are present in. FMCG has of course cigarettes, foods, personal care, matches and agarbattis, education and stationery, and then we have the hotels business, paper boards, agri and IT. In a snapshot, this is what the group really comprises of. This is just a segregation of what's new and what is old. And just to give you some numbers, in terms of our FMCG businesses, Ashirvad today is the #1 atta brand in the country. Bingo is the #1 in the bridges segment, which is the extruded snacks. Sunfeast is the #1 in the green biscuit segment, and Classmate is the #1 in notebooks. Yippee is the #2 brand in noodles. It's the only successful noodle launch in the last 3 decades. Engage is the #2 deodorant, and Mangaldeep is the #2 agarbatti in the country today. So, 25 world-class brands, 24,000 plus turnover in terms of consumer spend only from the FMCG businesses. We reach about 200 million households, 110 plus products launched, 900 patents filed and 350. Now I was talking about trade marketing and distribution. We manage through our trade marketing and distribution infrastructure about 1,500 SKUs across our FMCG categories. So this is a massive distribution organization. Okay? It has cigarettes, it has foods, it has different types of food products with different shelf life, different weight and volume equations, and very, very varied storage requirements and inventory management requirements. And then of course you have personal care, you have matches and agarbatti. All of this goes through one distribution organization. And that's a very, very important source of competitive advantage for the company. ITC also has one of the leading hotel chains in the country today. We have some iconic culinary brands in our portfolio. Many of you would have visited them and are familiar with them. We are the greenest luxury hotel chain in the world today. Windsor Manor, Bangalore, for example, is the first luxury property in the world to be net zero. Over 109 hotel properties, 73 locations, largest chain of hotels in the world with the maximum LEED Platinum rating as far as building design and environmental efficiency is concerned. These are some of the brands in the portfolio. And I spoke about the paper business. We are the largest paperboard player in the country today. We have certifications and memberships from the Forest Stewardship Council. We grow 3 times as much of pulp as we require. So we have a very large afforestation program in Bhadrachalam, over 9 lakh hectares. So one third of which is what ITC uses, but the balance is available to industry, and we replenish much more than what we use. Okay, then there is agri. On agri, we are now focusing on value-added products. So we are a large exporter of spices to Europe. We commit certain pesticide, over 30-40 odd pesticide-free, pesticide residue-free products, which none of our competitors are able to make that claim in the country today. We are building up Mars, which is the meta market for agri services, as I spoke about, and we are investing heavily in improving yields for farmers through climate smart products and solutions. Then we have a subsidiary called ITC Infotech, very profitable ventures, small but poised to scale up in the next couple of years. So every day our brands go and compete with over 100 companies. Virtually any large player you can think of in industry, in any of the products I shared with you, is actually a competitor for us. Okay. So many of these are single product focused organizations. They are not necessarily conglomerates. So they have the luxury and the advantage of going deep. We have tried to build the same capability across multiple businesses. So how are we able to do it successfully? I think one of the key features is our governance model. We have businesses which are quite independently managed by a chief executive and a management committee. Each function is represented in that management committee. And the business is empowered to take its decisions on pricing, investments, portfolio, marketing spends, overall business strategy. It just has to come to the corporate management committee and make a pitch for resources, commit to milestones, and that foundation of distributed leadership is what allows us to be in so many categories of products and be able to dominate across the value chain in a range of products. Because I think you would have all studied that as you become larger, one of the issues is that firms tend to become slow. Okay. Response time gets impacted, industry knowledge dissipates because you can't go deep, and that's a real threat for all large organizations. So the way around that threat is to ensure that all these entities have all the freedom to operate. So operational flexibility, freedom, very clear governance norms, what the business is responsible and accountable for, and what the center is responsible and accountable for. So typically finance and HR and culture are some things which we hold close and centrally, and we have the same standards. But everything else, which is market facing, whether it's the design of products, where you want to build a factory, whether you want to build a factory, what kind of technology you want to deploy, what's the kind of investment you want to put behind a brand, what's the portfolio you want to construct, who do you want to target, is entirely the decision of the business. And it's worked well for us, and we constantly keep evaluating whether our governance is agile and adept enough at addressing the competitive context. So that's a little bit about ITC. It's just a summary of the numbers of what it looks like over the last 2 decades or so. The number of categories really we have grown from 1 to 45. Competitors 14x. Number of factories from 6 to 200 today. Market capitalization has grown at CAGR of 16%. Turnover at 13%. Profit at 18%. And the non-cigarette business, which are all investments made in the last 2 decades, have grown from 1,300 to 41,000 crores today. So it's been a huge journey of diversification, of investment in new vectors of growth for the company, and I've been fortunate enough to be there during this period, and I have seen that the velocity of change has been huge. I mean, I had, in the first 5 years, what I witnessed versus what I had in the last 2 decades is a big shift. And it's been very exciting for many of us who stayed, because all these businesses have created opportunities for managers. Okay, otherwise, many of us would have probably been growing at a far slower pace. We wouldn't have experienced industry variety. We wouldn't have had the opportunity to create something new. I think the biggest excitement for many of us in our careers was the chance to create new businesses. I started out in the tobacco business of ITC, but in 2006, I moved to the foods business. At that time, the foods business was just maybe 350, 400 crores in turnover, and 3 or 4 categories, all nascent. By the time I completed that assignment in 2018, it had grown to a 12,000 crore business in terms of consumer spend, and was a dominant player in many of the categories. And you got to, you were completely involved in creating that. So you own it up, you're passionate about it. I remember we created 10 new factories in 3 years. I can't think of many FMCG companies which create a factory in a decade. We created 10 own factories in a very short period of 3 years, and we were able to do it very, very effectively and in a very cost-effective manner. So that's also important, because we are in businesses which are very, very low margin, competitively very, very intense. And you have to remember that these are businesses which have players who have legacy advantages. Their equipment is depreciated, they have product knowledge, they have relationship with trade. So all that we have been able to overcome and do better, and got where we have. So that, in a brief, is about ITC. Rest of it, I think I will answer as I address questions. So I'm happy to take anything which you'd like to throw at me, and if you have any questions about either ITC or my career as progress. Yeah, sure.
Sir, good afternoon.
Good afternoon.
From PGDM Bank.
Right.
So my question is regarding ITC's business about tobacco.
Yes.
So we usually heard that in every year,
Right.
government is increasing its taxes.
Yes.
So what is the motivation of ITC to stay in that business?
Excellent question.
And the second question is regarding Natraj. I saw Natraj. I am not able to understand whether at what area Natraj is competing with ITC.
In the stationery industry. But the first question is brilliant. See, do you know that in the tobacco industry, only 11% of tobacco consumption is through cigarettes? Rest of it is either through BDs, chewing tobacco, and various other forms of tobacco. And that 11% accounts for over 85 or 88% of revenue in terms of taxation. So, like you said, the taxation penalty is huge on the organized players. And what is the motivation for ITC? Okay, one is, we are the dominant player in the business. We have over 82-83% value share. Okay. Secondly, we are not in the business. Either you will have an international brand in the business, a Marlboro, Philip Morris, or a Camel. Okay, and India is the only market where international players, in spite of repeated attempts, have not been successful because of the stranglehold of our brands. And they have been trying now for 2 decades. And they continue to try. Okay, contraband. Because taxation is so high, a lot of illegal stuff comes into the country, okay, which is not duty paid. Because the margins are huge. Almost 60 to 70% of the price of a pack is taxes. So if you're able to evade that tax, people make a killing. So if we don't stay invested in this business, somebody else will come and do it, and will do it in a way which is not clean, which will take away revenue for the government, could lead to substandard products also, okay, for consumers, and it may lead to disorganization of the industry. So there is every incentive for us to stay and play. And we have to continue and make a compelling case to the government that your taxation is becoming punitive. When it becomes punitive, the incentives for others to shove in non-tax paid stock into the country becomes very high. So yeah, so it's a constant dialogue we keep having with the government and trying to convince them that why such high taxation actually has a very adverse effect. And you have a lot of leakage because PD is not taxed, chewing tobacco is not taxed, all sorts of, or taxed at a very low rate.
Sir?
Yes.
So I have two questions.
Sure.
And, the first one is on a lighter note. My name is Bharat, I'm from CGDM. On a lighter note, what was your reaction after the much awaited ITC breakout?
After the much awaited?
ITC breakout
Okay.
from the 200s.
Yeah.
And the second part of the question is that at a time when our generation barely stays with the company for 2 to 3 years or maybe 4 and 5 years, I and my friends Abhineet and Vijay were having a chat, and we were discussing how our fathers, they stayed for like 20 years, 25 and 30 years. And while reading out, you stayed with ITC for 25 years and still going on. So what's your motivation behind that?
Okay. Let me address the first one. You spoke about the breakout. Yeah. See, share prices of a company tend to be driven by sometimes short-term sentiments. Okay. So I don't think one should get too disturbed about the share price, and as executives in an organization, we try and ensure that we don't get hassle with the share price. Of course, we like it to improve. But it's not a commentary on performance, because if you see our margin improvement and you see the share price, you'll find now things have changed, but in the last 3 years, there's very little correlation between the two. The business is doing very well. We were improving year on year on margins in our non-cigarette businesses, and yet the market was not recognizing it. In the cigarette business, because of high taxation, there was an impact on volumes. So the market was therefore imposing a penalty for that. And there were ESG concerns. Though globally we have the highest ESG ratings amongst tobacco companies. So I think the market was reacting to sentiment, and that was also a phenomena where, growth stocks were the flavor of the month, not value stocks. Now with what has happened with interest rates going up, money becoming expensive, and growth stocks, because all the earning projections are way out in the future, investors are now rallying around value stocks and saying these will create value for us because they are fundamentally sound, profitable entities generating 13,000 crores of free cash flow, debt free every year, okay, and growing, and with a solid asset base, with dominant positions in these product categories you operate in. So I think being short-sighted, and that has been corrected. So last year I think the stock has grown from 40-50%, and if I look 2-3 years back, it's probably doubled. In fact, one of the things we do in ITC for all senior management, a large part of the compensation is linked to the stock price. The whole idea being that you will take a long-term view of the company rather than a short-term view. Coming to the second question, what has kept me and many of my colleagues, I can try and answer for myself. I think, at every turn in your career, you've generally been given the larger responsibility a little bit ahead of time. So it's put you always in a position that you're being challenged more than you're getting into a comfort zone. So just when you think you've got some element of mastery in your job, you've been pushed up into something larger. So that has actually kept you very excited and motivated. You've not felt the need to go out and look for that inspiration or that stretch. So that's one part. And some of these have been really stretch assignments. I changed my career, or not my career, my function from HR to marketing. I mean, the company didn't undertake any assessment center or anything. I just went and said, I feel I want to do that. They looked at my record, yeah, we can do that. And they said, are you locationally flexible? I said, yes. So they sent me for 1 month to Kerala. I trained. After 1 month, I was branch manager in Lucknow. I mean, I had never done marketing in my life. I had no idea of the function. But I learned. And it was rough. The initial 6 months was very rough. But you had a supervisor who was very supportive. You had a team which knew that you are not part of the function. So you sort of learned sometimes the hard way, you made mistakes. But I think the organization didn't hold it against you if you made those mistakes. They were patient. I spent 2 years in that role. Then they moved me as brand manager of Goldflake. Goldflake was the largest brand in ITC at that time, and still today I think is one of the largest brands in the country. I had no experience in brand management. I had not even studied brand management. But we learned on the job. There was a lot of investment in learning and development. Within 6 months of joining, I was given exposure to an overseas program. I was asked to work with the best printing and packaging guys globally in Germany to design new packs. So there was this implicit, unspoken trust that we think you'll deliver, now go figure. Okay. And resources were never a problem. If you were able to make a compelling case for it, you got the resources. You were accountable to deliver, but I think the company was more than generous about that. Maybe it has got to do with our business model, maybe it's got to do with our capacity to take those hits. And I think the third thing is that it's a very meritocratic system, end of the day. Okay. We are a professionally run organization. There is no single owner of this organization. It's a widely held entity. Okay. So professionalism, meritocracy, outcomes matter more than anything else. You can make the best of presentations, you can talk very well, but if you don't deliver on the ground, or if you deliver on the ground and you don't even do the rest very well, I think there is tremendous opportunity to grow. I think that has been something which has been very comforting. Because when we started our careers, ITC was the lowest pay masters on campus. And it continued like that for several years. So it was certainly not the money which held many of us there. The last thing is, I think it's a very relational contract. You feel you're part of a larger family. Many organizations, have sold off assets. They don't things like housing and all. There's unheard of. Nobody has housing colonies. We still have them even today, even in metro cities. Okay. We believe that it makes a difference to the employee's personal life, to create a socio-cultural context where families can be together. We have found it work well for us. So, we have factories in some remote locations, but we have managers and families living together. In Mumbai, in Bangalore, in Chennai, in Calcutta, we have large housing complexes for managers and families. We believe that it's an institution. You're here for the long run. We're not offering a job, we're offering a career. And therefore we invest fully in the individual. And we'll take a punt, we'll take a risk. Some of them will work out, some of them will not. But the investment is in the entire individual and not just from a narrow perspective of the job. I think that is what has kept many of us around for so long. Yes?
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
My name is Amitav.
Yes.
Sir, as you mentioned in your presentation, that ITC has made several acquisitions and investments over the period of decades. So, sir, my question is, how did your team manage integration of human resource? And second question is, how do you manage culture of your organization?
Good question. Let me give some examples of recent. Be Natural was a brand which we bought, but the human resources, that entrepreneur decided to part with them and they didn't come in, but the brand came in. We recently bought a spices brand called Sunrise, and it's a very profitable business. And the manpower has also come into ITC. We recognize that just as we would like to integrate, there is also something to learn from them. So we have decided to keep that entity as it is without going and imposing our policies, terms, etc. Because we said here's a very profitable enterprise run very well by an entrepreneur. Don't disturb it. Okay? It's running phenomenally well. People are pretty satisfied. Make sure that the basics are taken care of. And that in terms of culture, values, things like performance measurement, things like remuneration, you follow the principles which ITC operates on. Okay. As long as the principles are followed, don't mess with the nuts and bolts. So when I say when the principles are followed, for example, performance is assessed rigorously. There is segmentation of people in terms of high, low, medium. Remuneration is benchmarked to the market. Culture and values are similar to what we expect any manager in ITC to demonstrate. So these are essentials. Maintain the essentials, do what is necessary from a commercial perspective, but make sure that the values are consistent. So our focus has always been on ensuring that the values and the application of ITC's principles to those set of people, whoever have come with the acquired brand. Having said that, but very few of that has happened. Most of these purchases have been brands rather than people and machinery.
So this is an extension of the questions that were asked by Akshay and Bharat, my friends. So as you told that the government has been punishing in terms of taxes to ITC Tobacco, and even we talk of the investor sentiment that is not, I would say, not that positive when it comes to ITC because it has tobacco business. So does ITC has considered this thing that can spin off the hotels and FMCG business apart from the tobacco so that it can have, because I know ITC is a debt-free company, it doesn't need investors money, but in case it wants to expand into multiple sectors, more than what it has right now. So is there a plan or something?
So in fact, we have announced it publicly also, and our chairman has made an announcement on several occasions that we are open to looking at alternate structures for our hotels business, certainly our IT business at some point in time. So it is quite possible that at the right time we'll adopt a structure as approved by the board, which may lead to some amount of disinvestment or demerger of a part of ITC, which is listed separately in the market. So that's very much in the works and under consideration. We have certainly thought of doing that. But it's not because of the issue with tobacco. It's because the nature of these businesses are very different from some of the other businesses in the portfolio. Yeah.
Good afternoon, sir. I'm Ramesh Chankar from EDM GM branch. Sir, thank you for the presentation. And I would like to, before I go for the question, I would like to mention that when I read my strategy textbook, it mentions many examples of ITC, and as an Indian, I feel proud when I see this Indian company mentioned in the textbook.
Glad to hear that. Thank you.
Sir, my question is, one thing I observed in your presentation was related to food products. Yippee, Sunfist and Bingo. These are all food related brands. And my question is why not a single brand? I'm sure if you manage a single brand, it would have actually helped in cost. So this is a little academic question. And when I see a few other FMCG brands, I see there is a clear relation being established between the parent and the child brands, which is a little different here. So I would like to know the reasoning behind it if it is possible.
Certainly. Let me give you an explanation with my limited knowledge of brands, but nonetheless. See, we are trying to target very different consumer subsets, whether it is with a Yippee noodles or whether it is with Santi's biscuits or Bingo. The brand positioning is very different. And we don't have a history where any of these, whether it is Sunfeast or Bingo or Yippee, there is no historical residue in the consumer's mind. Okay, unlike a Wills or a Goldplay, which by the way we use as mother brands. In these, there is none. And we want to position ourselves very uniquely in that segment. See, what happens is, yeah, it will save you on cost, but it may not get you the saliency and the brand stickiness which you want. After some time, you may land up in a position where it means little bit of something for everybody, but it is not powerful enough to be a compelling proposition. So if you want to make your brand really stand out distinctly and you want to take a unique positioning, let us say Bingo is about doing something edgy. But if you're trying to sell Ashirwad Atta to a housewife, it just, you can't, Ashirwad has no context to a young teenager. Similarly, Sunfeast will not be relevant to a child who is buying a candy. He may look for something which is more sort of relevant to his context and reason to buy. If I take the example of our Choco Fills, that's a unique product. You have chocolate inside the biscuit, and we were pioneers in that. Now, that's not a fun product. It's a luxury product. Okay, the occasion is maybe post-meal, or you offer it to somebody when there's a celebration or somebody important comes home. Now, if you associate that with Yippee and your advertising is about fun and doing things spontaneously, there is a huge disconnect between what the product offering is and what the brand is. Therefore, the problem with the umbrella brand is that it will create confusion in the consumer's mind. Is this Sunfeast? Is this Yippee? How much of Yippee should I play up? How much of Sunfeast I should now play? So therefore, you have to take a very clear position that this is what my brand stands for, and then focus on that. If I create similar products in the Yippee genre, then I can use it. Maybe pasta or something like that, Or let me take another example. ITC MasterChef. Now, it's about culinary expertise. It's about getting the finest Indian cuisine to your table. So it has to, why MasterChef? Because there is a connotation of a hotel's brand, that it has the finest cuisine. Therefore, you associate it with ITC MasterChef. There's a connection with the consumer. But the word Ashirwad and Sunfeast will have no connection in the context of ready to eat or ready to cook. So we have to make that. Otherwise, we will save cost, but we will not achieve anywhere close to outcomes in terms of brand strength, brand saliency, awareness, recall, relation with what the brand stands for and the TG. Those are things which we will compromise on by we save on cost. And at the end of the day, that compromise will be more costly than the cost we save. Sorry, but to say that, but you have an important point, because a lot of people have given us feedback that the ITC logo on the pack is very important, because it's a testament of trust, hygiene, purity, quality. So on hygiene, purity, quality, we will use the ITC trademark as a mark of trust. But those are minimum threshold standards to buy a product. If you want me to get excited about buying it, I'll have to create a different brand story.
That's what I alluded to when I say that parent and child brand, because I never knew that Savlon and Mukherji were ITC brand. I knew this first time.
I mean, for example, this parent and child brand is a very important example because they've used it very successfully in the cigarette brands. Goldflake Kings has had a very powerful impact on Goldflake Premium Filter, which was very effective in wiping out competition from GPN, and today is the dominant brand in that segment because of the power of the parent. many people said, okay, I can't afford a gold platings, but I will try a gold plate premium. But it's a very fine line, because the reverse should not happen, where the premium brand gets depremiumized because if you use it too frequently and inappropriately.
Sir, good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Myself, Prashant.
Yes.
Sir, given ITC has core capability in tobacco, bottles and FMCG goods in early days,
Right.
and also in the last decade it had made a product development into wide ranges using existing capabilities. So I wonder why ITC went into into information technology field where it is not a core competency of ITC.
Good question. But therefore, unlike the other businesses of ITC Infotech is a wholly owned subsidiary. Okay, it's not a division, and it doesn't roll necessarily into the same P&L for ITC Limited. It's a wholly owned subsidiary. It's got a different. It's got people who are only from the industry, barring maybe a finance person who's from ITC today. Everybody there in ITC Infotech is from the IT industry. The genesis of ITC Infotech is also somewhere within ITC because it started as a division called Information Services Division, Information Systems Division. Many, many years back before the IT industry bloomed into what it is today. So it's, in some sense, even within ITC today, it's dealt with much more independence and freedom, and they do their own. I mean, the whole thing is very industry specific. They also have a very important selling proposition because they craft a lot of solutions for ITC. So when they go to consumers, to their customers outside, when they go and make a pitch, they can stand up and say that we do the IT support for entire ITC, or we do the digital marketing or any other IT capability within ITC, which they do. Like for example, shared services for SAP, okay, or for success factors implementation. So a lot of things which they go and pitch to clients, they're doing for us. And because they're doing it well here, they're able to make a claim about it outside. So that gives them an important advantage. Yes, sir.
Good afternoon, sir.
Good afternoon.
So my question to you is based on the government regulation. So recently it was in the news that the government is trying to mandate that cigarette to be sold in packages only. Loose cigarette may not be able to be sell in the market. So ITC, as an ITC, what is your take on this?
See, that we don't sell loose. I mean, we sell to our dealer, and our dealers sell to convenience outlets and packs. So we don't have any loose sales proposition. Retailers tend to do it like that because consumers ask them for it. So consumers have a limited outlay. So they ask for sticks instead of asking for a pack.
So like earlier also it was introduced in a way like 10-15 years back when they came up with a proposition, they tried to sell it in packages of 5. So that way it can like promote it in that way. So like what is the current premise here and
So if that legislation comes, of course we'll have to comply, and then we'll have to make innovative solutions to address it if it comes along. If it so happens, then maybe we'll have to make packaging which is 2, 3, 4, 5, if that's what consumers want. But we'll have to make it cost effective because that will of course lead to higher costs.
Okay.
Versus a pack of 10 or 20, now you have to create packaging for smaller units.
Good evening, sir.
Good evening.
Sir, this side.
Yeah.
So my question on ITC has maintained a very strong balance sheet on working capital. Operating margins have been stupendous during the COVID times. But in the COVID, we saw especially if we talk about the printing division of ITC, the COVID situation has transformed the whole education sector to move to the digital side. And even then the working capital which we see and the operating margins that ITC was maintaining at that time was quite brilliant. So how do you think ITC built on that, seeing the changes?
See, there has been a lot of demand for printing and printing products. with formalization of any economy, that goes up. We have assets which are legacy assets. There is of course a depreciation which much of the equipment is already taken care of. But we operated in fact in very high capacity utilization during COVID. None of our factories stopped. Okay, we had approvals, of course, barring tobacco where you didn't have the approval to do it. But food products were all essential. Printing, these are all essential items. We were able to print and run. And we ran 12-hour shifts, 2 shifts. Government gave special approvals. We were able to operate. And we had people staying in the factory at one point in time and managing factories. We organized separate transportation. We had to get even contract labor from home. I mean, it was a huge task. Huge task. And those 2 years we were reviewing operations almost daily to ensure that nothing stops in terms of supply to the market. Because as all of you would be aware, people were still buying on e-commerce sites. And buying, I mean, e-commerce saw a huge jump. So you had to service that. And we were able to do it by really stretching ourselves. And at that point in time, I think it really helped that people went beyond what is expected of them to make it happen. In spite of the threat, the fear, we instituted a lot of safety norms in the factories. And people felt comforted coming to the factory. They felt it's a safe working environment. And they came voluntarily. So it was tough, but we ensured that asset utilization is at its peak.
Thank you, sir.
Good afternoon, sir. Hi, thank you so much for joining us today. And my question is more regarding the culture that you were focusing on in your presentation as well. I wanted to know what kind of culture that in these past many years has worked and which hasn't worked in the organization.
So I think culture, what has worked? Culture what has worked is a focus on excellence. That whatever we do in the market with consumers has to be exceptional in quality. So we don't launch products in a hurry. We will keep iterating till we really crack it. And therefore, we will invest the best in terms of talent, technology, that works well. The second culture is one of making things happen. Execution is the focus. I think there's a lot of emphasis on getting things done as committed. Okay. And people are held to account to that. And we have a very robust performance management system. About 10-12 years back, we introduced a bell curve. Okay, and right up to senior management, and we still do it today. So, and it's a KPI-based system. There is a lot of objectivity in performance assessment, and there is a segmentation of talent, which is not an easy thing to do for a company which has been around for so long and not used to a system like that. So it took some getting used to make that transition. And the third thing about culture, I think, would be accessibility, the ability to exactly say what you think about issues. We can have a lot of disagreements about things and you can express them. But once we take a decision, then we all align. But the freedom to express a divergent point of view, to be able to tell your boss or somebody about him, and to have a lot of debate and arguments is, I think, is a good thing about the culture. Because then it helps you spot mistakes before they go to the market. What we could do better? I think on speed we can be better. Okay, I think sometimes decision making can be very complex, and there may be several people we may get involved in taking a call. We can be even more aligned on profits. Okay, in some of our newer businesses, it has taken time to get better margins than competition, and we are still not there. So I think we can certainly do a better job of being more financially and commercially focused. The focus has been on size and turnover, but there is opportunity to further improve on margins. And therefore, what does it mean in terms of culture? It means a very high sense of commercial acumen and being very hard-nosed about some decisions. I think that's something which we can certainly do. And then
I would like to request everyone to please connect over LinkedIn. I think we'll have a hard stop at this point.
Can I have just one question?
okay, you'll answer. Please. No problem.
Sir, thanks for being here. My question is regarding performance management which you talked about. You said you introduced bell curve. You already have spent around 25 years with this organization. And I know you might be the best person to answer in terms of how performance management evaluates over the year. And bell curve is not in the recent times being, it's been very much criticized for not being very effective in terms of what the outcome and objective is being sought from. And being introduced by GE, even GE has parted ways with bell curve. So why have you still with the bell curve, or is there anything or something sort of course correction which you have done in terms of performance management which will actually give the outcome? Please.
See, many organizations say they have done away with it. They haven't. Okay, let me tell you the truth. They haven't. Because when it comes to distributing increments, budgets are always limited. When budgets are limited, you have to make choices. When you have to make choices, you will give X over Y. Okay, it is not an unlimited, infinite basket. Whether it is promotions, whether it is increments, it is annual bonus. And that's the way the reality is. In fact, I was just talking to somebody, one of my batchmates. He works with a global bank. He said, we have also said we don't do. But you know, when the pressure comes, don't give X, Y, Z rating to more than 20%. It's all informed. So, I would, with the pinch of salt, be careful about what you see as public announcements versus what actually happens. It's in fashion to say that we don't, but when at the end of the day, when it comes to giving that increment, when it comes to giving the bonus, no organization applies the same yardstick to all. Okay, we have to make those differences, and that's the nature of the beast. Otherwise, you will not have a high-performing culture. It's a very difficult thing to do. It's a very difficult conversation to have. Because how do you tell a person that you've done a great job, but somebody has done it better, and therefore he or she will get a higher rating? It's a very difficult conversation for the supervisor, and it can be tough for people to receive it. But you have to explain that this is in a context, and the way we have dealt with it is not that we are saying somebody who is on the extreme end of the curve, on the other end, has to leave the organization. No. We recognize that in a relative scale, one will be better than 10, but that doesn't mean 10 is not needed. 10 will still get a bonus, 10 will still get an increment. It may be significantly lower than somebody who is number 1. Okay, so we are not saying many organizations do bell curve where they exit folks at the bottom. We don't. No. We are saying everyone's contribution is valuable, but it is in relation to someone else, and therefore XYZ stands at category 4, somebody stands at category 1. Category 4 also gets rewards, but the quantum of rewards is different. So that is how we have tried to deal with it. The second way we have tried to deal with it, they have linked it to business performance. The more robust objective setting process you have, the better it is at the end of the year to convince or to accept. Because then it's for the outcomes to tell. You know, then you don't have to, if you agree at the beginning of the year, this is the margin I will deliver, this is the growth I will deliver, and in relation to competition I will be 1.1 times better, 1.2 times better, then you just look back at the end of the year where you were. So, but you are right, it has its negatives, so you have to be very careful in objective setting. Because if you become very aggressive in objective setting, people will not take stretch targets. So there has to be a very fine balance between setting objectives in a realistic manner, discussing it and then setting it through dialogue, not through an imposition. And therefore that's a very painful and time-taking process. So business targets get set through dialogue, so that there is ownership. Otherwise, you will have some of the, there are negatives with the forced ranking, but you get accentuated further. So then everybody will come and underplay. If I can do 100, why will I go and say 100? No, I'll come and say 90. So you have to, a very important task of the center is to ensure target setting is rational, well thought through in the context of the industry and the resources available. And it's not that we impose it blindly. We recognize that, for example, if a business has 5 people in the leadership team or 3, I can't expect that to be forced rank, but I will examine very carefully, and I will not just let it pass easily. So there is a guideline, and we try and ensure as close to the guideline as we follow. We may vary by 3-4 percentage points, but that's it. But it's tough, yeah. It's a tough thing to do. Okay, thank you.
I would like to request Saurabh and others, if they have any further questions, to please connect over LinkedIn. And it was great having you, sir. Now I'd like to invite Divya to please give away the closing remarks. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. Firstly, I'm sure you're here for the homecoming.
Yeah.
I'm sure you had a great day.
Yes.
The closing, I think we also had a very good time interacting with the alumni, especially in a space like this. So, from the bottom of all our hearts, we are really grateful to have you here and host you as a guest speaker. I'd like to thank you from the entire batch. Guys, a huge applause for sir.
It was a pleasure being here, and I thought the questions were great. Thank you so much. Really appreciate that.
As a token of appreciation and gratitude both, I would like to call upon Mr. Shamu sir to hand you over the memento.